Yes, hello everybody and welcome to today's stream. I am so glad to be back. I hope you can all hear me. According to my technology, it's working fine. Why am I dressed like this, you might ask? Well, actually, you probably wouldn't ask. You know my channel. This is a new costume that I have picked up. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh, the skits, the costumes, they don't work so well. They're hammy, they're bad, they're embarrassing, they're whatever. It's my channel and, well, I'll be stupid if I want to, I say. The whole point of being a YouTuber or a social media influencer, I think anyway, is about having fun with doing what you're doing. And if you take it so seriously that it's not something that you even entertain the idea of, well, then so be it. Go be boring. That's my opinion. So this arrived the other day. Now, I have discovered the terror and the joy of Wish, and they haven't paid for a promotion whatsoever, and I would advise you avoid them like the plague, because it is a dark hole down which you will descend into madness. So I've been picking up these costumes things. Now, I will admit, okay, it's been a tough couple months, I will admit, and so I do a lot of shopping therapy. I really do. The benefit of Wish is that this thing, for example, now you can't see it, and unfortunately you can't, but it goes all the way down to my feet. It's like this long, and technically well, never mind. It's really this long thing, right? So it's this mega thing, and I think I paid like $5 for it, and $5 for shipping. I think I've worked out Wish's actual modus operandi. I think they're a shipping company and that they make money from the shipping because they give you all sorts of discounts. Oh, you've bought 10 items. Here's 10% off your next purchase. It comes off of the purchase item. It doesn't come off the actual the shipping cost. So I think they make it off of shipping. So I have had a lot of things delivered in the last few months or so, much to the web goblin's chagrin. He's like, okay, add on another $2, add on another $2, add on another $2. Anyway, I have probably had about 20 costumes delivered, because next year we've got a big plan for the YouTube channel and it requires costumes, or I require costumes anyway. And I would say of those 20, not probably, 2 didn't arrive, or 3 didn't arrive. I got refunds from 2 of them. One of them, I missed the window because I waited too long. So I waited for 30 days. It still didn't arrive. I waited another 10 days. And then when I said, okay, hang on, I need my money back, they're like, oh, you missed the window. So that was sort of $10 gone out the window. Okay. But considering that the other 16 costumes that I picked up, not one of them has cost me more than $10 to $15. I mean, they really have been low cost, and they look okay on the stream. The reason why this is so obvious is I'm actually wearing a black t-shirt underneath, because I am the Minnesotan Batman. So it doesn't look right. Anyway, so there we are. Right. Okay. So. Costumes it is, and I wanted to test out the white costume on the camera to see what it did with the backgrounds and stuff. It actually works quite well because it allows me to actually bump my camera up to quite well, it's complicated. Anyway, it's okay. Okay, right, so we're not here to talk about Wish or costuming or my poor impulse control. We are here to talk about all kinds of things RPG related, and if you are from the Kickstarter and you want to talk about the Kickstarter stuff, we can do so as well. For those of you that don't know the Kickstarter, that is for the book. I don't think I actually even have it loaded anymore. No, I think I've taken it off of the data. What's this? Oh, that's one of the ships from the book. That's a Gnomish Eagle Airy ship that's in the book Nautical Campaigns, Complete Guide to Nautical Campaigns, which has it did run. It's done. It's over. The Kickstarter is finished. It's now in the delivering stage. We're getting all of the artwork coming in for the book. And if you did miss it, that's not a problem. You can head on over to our website, www.greatgamemaster.com. How could I forgot that? Greatgamemaster.com, where you can pick up a copy once it becomes available in January. You can pre-order it now and you get your name in the book if you do so. We're just trying to raise money to pay for all of the artwork and stuff. So there we go. Landon, I see you. Landon's one of the great Kickstarter supporters. He was giving us constant updates. He's like, oh, you've made 100%, you made 120%, you made 130%. So there we go. Oh, I need to confess something. Super chat. Thank you, Adrian, for making the stream. It's super cool. YouTube, and there's some other stuff coming through there. I'll get to that one. YouTube has changed how you access your live streams. And I don't know how you actually access your pre-live stream setup. So this is all going to be wrong if you're on YouTube. And there's 52 of you at the moment, which is brilliant. Thank you. I don't know how to access it. I was setting it up this morning. I'm like, okay, YouTube. Normally you go to like other, and then it's set up live stream. Can't find that option now. I'm going to have to go and look for it. So I actually don't see the super chats coming through as fast as I used to. So just bear that in mind. If I am slow on that, please forgive me. I do appreciate that. Thank you for that donation. So there we are. Right. Now, questions. If you have a question, put it in big bold caps as Tropico Boy has done there. You can see that there. Big word question in front of it so that I can see it. And no, you shouldn't switch to Twitch. I can see all of the messages. So as you can see, I can see all of the YouTube and Twitch messages. I'm not getting instant updates as I normally would have beforehand. Anyway, so just bear that in mind. Right. Yeah, hit the like button if you want to. It's always nice. So there we go. Dead Elsie Gamer says, oh, well, hang on. Let me go to that first question. Tropico Boy asks, I've been working on my D&D expansion. It's for building, and I have problems with the cost for the size. Any suggestions? Buildings. Okay, so this is something I think it's worth talking about, because it doesn't matter whether it's 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons or it's Call of Cthulhu or it's Star Wars. Costing is always a problem. Costing is always a problem when it comes to things beyond just the scale of heroes. So there was a system, and there's lots of systems out there where you don't actually accrue physical wealth. You accrue like a wealth value, a wealth score. It's like, oh, your wealth score is 7. Okay, great. So you can purchase tanks and missiles if you make a roll and you roll higher than 7. Or there are some systems that are like that. I hate those systems. Personally, I think as humans, we like to hoard over our treasure. We all have an inner dragon in there somewhere. So you've got this treasure option. All right. I see also my audio might be a bit soft, so I'm just going to increase that a little bit. I hope I don't deafen you now. So cash is always a problem. We discovered when we were doing the finances for nautical campaigns, in the player's handbook, there's actually a cost for buying a ship, and it's like 30,000 gold, which when you then start to crunch the numbers, if you transport 1 ton of spices, again, this is by the economy of the player's handbook, 1 ton of spices costs about 35,000 gold or 40,000 gold. It's some ridiculous amount of money. So if you were to buy a ship and transport 1 ton of spice, you'd make back the cost of your ship. So it becomes ridiculous. And we know that economies don't work like that. Otherwise, everyone just buy ships and go and sail the seas. So the idea here is that when you are looking at creating economies for big structures, for big things, ships, castles, and the like, I think that it requires you as the game master to step back and decide. Is it going to be something that requires actual physical calculation? So, running costs. how much per brick, what is the construction site like, what's availability of labor, all of those kinds of things, and then the actual administration of running that space afterwards. Are you going to factor all of that in which case your game is very different to, you know what, the building is actually a location. It's somewhere where the PCs go. They have a value attached to that location because it's their sanctum sanctori, their inner space, their happy place that they can go to. And the operation and the maintenance of it is not part of the role-playing. For me, that's a big decision maker. And in the book that I wrote when it comes to the ships and stuff, I specifically state you can drop all of the economy stuff from the system and it will still work. It's only if the players want to keep track of the cache. So if you want a reference document to go and have a look at, this is very tight around my neck, I'm just going to loosen it a bit. If you want a document to go and check out, it doesn't matter what system you're using, again, it just gives you some insight into the mentality of what goes into these sort of things. Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, they released a book called Castles, Guide to Castles, I think it was. It was a blue book, soft cover book, brilliant book. And that's informed me over the last 20 years anyway, in terms of how I approach these things. Because in that book, there are calculations upon calculations upon calculations as to how much your castle actually costs. And you start to get to the point where you realize that a standard sized castle that we think of, a keep, an outer bailey, an inner bailey, and a few towers, is going to set you back in the region of 500,000 gold pieces just to build, and then the staff requirements are close to 1,000 gold a month. So those numbers, your PCs are going to have to go adventuring on an hourly basis to raise enough money to pay for the thing. So it starts becoming very complicated. All right. So that's a very long answer to that, because I'm quite passionate about it. And you will get players who go, oh, no, we want that. We want the accounting exercise. We want to figure out how much trade we need to do and. On the other hand, you get PCs who go, I'm not bothered, don't care. So there we go. So that would be something to have a look at. Next question, Michael Harrier asks, why D20 D&D versus other systems? It seems that 5th edition has so many YouTubers while other systems have like 0. Do you find D&D to be the best system, and or is it just more lucrative? Okay, Michael Harrier, you've scratched the surface of something that is deeply complicated, I would say, in terms of answering. The long and short of it, it doesn't pay. That's it. That's really the long and short of it. I wish there was some other thing to it, but I'm going to break it down a little bit for you, because I don't want you guys to think that all YouTubers out there are evil or just after the money. I'm going to give you some actual data. Now, bearing in mind, this is my opinion and other YouTubers might have a different one, but I can only tell you what I know. So, if I release a video that has the word Dungeons and Dragons or 5th edition or something along those lines in the title, because legally I'm not allowed to actually say Dungeons and Dragons. It's a copyrighted term, etc., etc. But we're not going to get into that. If I release a video like that, I will get double the amount of views that I would get if I were to release something along the lines of Fate or 7th Sea or anything else, as a matter of fact. Even Cthulhu, which is rapidly becoming the second most popular system out there, even if I put Cthulhu in the title, it won't grow. It really won't grow. That's just the bottom line. Now, apart from the fact that income on YouTube is generated by your number of views, so it has nothing to do with your subscriber numbers, it's the number of people who watch your video. So you get half the people who are watching your video. The other problem, though, is a much bigger one, insofar as YouTube won't recommend your video channel as often to people if you have a smaller viewer base. If you have a bigger viewer base, they go, people want to watch this, we can make more money off of advertising by showing this video to everybody, so we're going to put this as a recommended viewing, as opposed to this one which is not getting a lot of views. So the repercussions are twofold. That's from that side. From the other side, if you, for example, are a large influencer and you have clout and you can prove that your videos will raise sales, you can go to publishers, and I have done this on multiple occasions, and I have said, okay, I want to talk about your new system, and they will return and say, okay, great, how many people are going to watch the video? And you go, well, in my case, it's maybe 6,000 people guaranteed will watch this video if we talk about this brand new system. How much is that going to cost? Well, now I have to learn that system in order to be able to talk about it. I could just pick up the book and go, I think this is a great system. I've never actually read the rules. So then you start adding in a cost factor. So then you go to these publishers and you say, okay, well, it's actually going to cost you X amount. Let's say $200 in order for me to do a review of your system. They then look at it and they go, $200, that's a huge amount of money for us as a small publisher. So it's a very, very, very difficult space. The publishers don't have money to burn in terms of advertising, so they can't flood the market in terms of we're everywhere, which is what Dungeons & Dragons has access to. And then the final thing, and this it's a bit of a rant, I suppose, but the final thing is that if I talk about Dungeons & Dragons, by virtue of the fact that it is so prolific, that it is so invasive, and that it has been around for so long, everybody goes, oh, okay, yes, we know Dungeons & Dragons, and we get an idea that it's a D20 system, and it's a versus system, and it has been around long enough that it has looked at lots and lots of different rules variations, so it does give us a pretty good base. Anyway, so that's the long and the short of it. I would love to do more systems, alternative systems. At the same time, I have to pay rent, so... And I think if you ask other YouTubers, you're going to get similar responses. So it is what it is. Okay, right. Next question is from Matthew Elkins. My PCs are about to visit a secretive druid circle, exploring one player's repressed memories. Lovely. I was hoping for some inspiration in running a sort of spiritual journey episode. Thoughts? Matthew, I always like to default what's been done before, what's been expected before. The idea of a spiritual journey, and I've had a lot of success with this in the past, and there have been lots of TV series that have done this as well, so it's not a new idea. It is something that could be quite fun. The character, the druid, enters the druid circle. The druids have agreed to take them into their own minds to explore this repressed memory. I would give all of the other players each other's character sheets. I would swap them around, or I would give them roles to play within this repressed memory space and give them targets and goals. So your character knows this information, this information, this information, and that information, and that's it. Go have fun playing an NPC within the one player's mind. Now, I did that in the Windswift adventures that I used to run, where the one character was literally inside the mind of this god, and the three other players were all playing facets of that god. They didn't know what each other knew. They just knew what was on the sheet. I had given them objectives, which was you must try and convince the character that they are insane, or you must try and convince the character that the other three personalities are lying. So set them up against each other. So it's not just, here's a script, read it, because we don't want that. We want them to have fun role-playing and interacting. So I gave them targets, I gave them limitations. I said, you can't talk about this, you don't know anything about that. I gave them some basic stats. I was like, you have +5 on everything. You're a god. You don't need to worry about skills and stuff. So that was how I did that, and that was a lot of fun. People had a lot of fun with that, so bear that in mind. Otherwise, you can also do a repressed memory if all of the other players are there by having them roll back their characters to level 1, depending on where the memory sits, of course. So lots of ideas, lots of options there. Hopefully something will spark your mind there. Landon then, oh wait, hang on. If I miss a question, by the way, because you can see they come through quite quickly, and I do take a long time to answer them. If I miss a question, just repost it. It's not spam, it's just reposting. So there we are. Right, so Landon says, what's your favorite thing from each edition of Dungeons & Dragons that you have played? There's some legacy stuff in terms of your first is always your best. I don't think so. My first experience was with the Red Box with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. What I liked about that system, I guess, was not so much the system, because I never really got to grips with the system. I liked that it opened up the world of role-playing to me. It was this amazing place. It was unbelievable. It blew my mind. So that was Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Second edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, what I really liked, and I was actually talking about this to someone the other day, there was a distinct sense that your character could die like that. Druid, a wizard could start the game with 2 hit points. House cats did 1d2 damage. A house cat could kill a wizard at level 1 with 1 hit. And in those days it was THAC0, and wizards couldn't wear armor, and they couldn't do this, and they didn't have all those wonderful spells and things available to them. So there was a very, very imminent sense of death. There was a lot wrong with second edition, but there was that fear, that absolute fear that death could happen quickly. 5th edition doesn't have a fear of death as far as I'm concerned. I don't like killing PCs. I really don't. So I'm not looking for a system that allows me to kill PCs. The system was in such a way that the PCs, the players, were like, death really could happen instantly, and the GM won't be able to save us. So there we go. So that was 2nd edition. 3.5, because I don't really talk about that. I mean, 3.5 came out so quickly that it wasn't even worth sort of thinking about. But 3.5, I think, was a very good version. It set the groundwork for our skills and for combat and for armor class. It dropped a lot of things that I liked. Initiative modifiers of weapons and spells, I like that. But 3.5, I think it introduced the skill system and it introduced the combat system. And that for me was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I really, really liked that. 4th edition, what I did like about 4th edition was that it gave us minions. It brought in the concept that you could have 1 hit point monsters. Did a lot of other things differently, which felt wrong as a role player. I don't want to say wrong, I'm just saying differently. And 5th edition streamlined a lot of things. They brought in the advantage, disadvantage thing. I'm still on the fence about that, to be perfectly honest with you. But I do feel that 5th edition, I actually don't know if I like it yet or not. I'm not sure. I like it as a role-playing system because everyone role-plays in it and everyone has a common framework. Not sure if it's the best role-playing iteration of Dungeons and Dragons yet. So, but yes, I like that it's streamlined. I like that a lot of the terms were clarified to a large degree, but it is such a mammoth sort of task to try and do that. Anyway. Dragon Soul 13 says, how do I get a new young player to roleplay in conversation that has no experience? Have the conversation with them as the NPC. I often find that that's the fastest way to get people who don't know how to roleplay to roleplay, is ask them that. Quite literally, put on the best voice you can and get them and ask them questions. So, where were you born? Well, that's interesting. I had a cousin out that way. Do you remember Fulcrum Bridge? You remember the bridge? We used to sail little boats underneath there. You ever fall in the river? Oh, that river was cold. It sure was cold. But, so what were you asking about that there question? Miggins, do you remember her with her little pie shop? Oh, she used to blow my mind. She really did. I had such a thing on her. I wonder if she's still there. Have you been back to Fulcrum Bridge recently? I haven't been in years. So jump straight into it. Just jump into it and let them and ask them questions about the role-playing aspect of their character rather than the technicals. I think sometimes we forget as GMs, we want to just give them the information. We want to give them the quest. We want to get them going. And then we forget to role-play ourselves. So maybe that might be a way of doing it. The next question is from Draconi, or Dracone. In your opinion, what is the most amusing character you've made and played? And could you explain why a bit? So, the most amusing character I've made and played. I haven't played many characters designed just for amusement. In terms of amusing myself and indulging myself, I would have to say that Asander, the doctor that I made for the Save or Dice channel, the last series that they ran, and the name's gone completely out of my head what it was called. Dr. Asander, he was a tragic character. He was a human who had suffered an intense medical explosion and was basically now a brain in a jar. and all he wanted was touch. He just wanted to touch another human being, to have physical contact, because he couldn't, because he was stuck inside this robotic brain. And his true love, he realized, was obsessed with something that was going to destroy the galaxy. So he had to sacrifice her in order to save the whole thing. So yeah, he was amusing because he had all of these things, these paranoias, and I really played him as someone who genuinely cared as a physician. He was really after trying to help people. And I had a lot of fun as a player trying to bring that back and making sure that his caring nature was always at the fore. So the party would be doing something like, okay, but how would a Sander see this as a life risk? How would he see this as a risk? So he was a bit of a paranoid character as well. And the challenge of that was that I didn't want to hold the party back all the time by being the overly cautious player. But yeah, I think of the ones recently, I had a lot of fun with that. So there we are. That's I guess. I mean, I also played a priest once, but I played a pacifist priest, and possibly I learnt from him, where he would just give money to people. He was quite rich, so he would just give money to enemies to make them stop fighting. And that really irritated one of the players, to the point that the player was like, I'm not playing with this coward. He's ridiculous. I'm leaving. So yeah, there we go. There we go. It's always tricky. I mean, you suddenly go, oh, all the characters. I can still remember the very first character I created for Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition. His name was Belenran. He was a wizard evoker. In those days, you had kits which you applied to the class. So he was a wizard first and foremost. Then he was an evocation wizard with a claymore. He ran around with a claymore because he only had one spell at level 1. Well, he had 2 because he was an evoker. But that was it. Once you've done that, you've done that. Okay, right, next question. Drago Uchiha says, what is the best way to keep my party focused on any given mission, prevent going down rabbit holes? I had to learn this the hard way, personally. Rabbit holes exist because you allow them to exist as the game master. If the party is on a quest to find a goblin, and they arrive in a little village, and the village is supposed to just give them the information on they saw the goblins moving through the territory, and so that's it. That's where the goblins are. They must be in that direction. And the party suddenly goes, oh, but the village is colluding with the goblins, so the village must be evil. You need to right then and there put a stop to that. So whether that's the arrival of the king's forces, who then declare that the village are colluding with the goblins and that they will take care of it and the PC should move on, holes are going to happen. So try and plug them, but at the same time embrace them. So they start going down rabbit holes. That's fine. Let them explore that rabbit hole. Put your main quest on hold, unless it's a timed, in the next 10 minutes the world will end. If that's the case and they go down a rabbit hole, end the world and teach the players that sometimes if you've given them a deadline, they need to respond to it. But if it isn't time-based, put it on hold. Yes, the goblin hordes go off, and yes, the trail will theoretically get cold whilst the PCs are following the rabbit hole that they're involved in at the moment. But at the same time, all you need to do is that they come across a farmer whilst they're following the cold trail, and the farmer tells them that, oh, well, the goblins camped here for about a week, or however long the PCs were mucking around, and then they moved on again. You can solve that problem. So I quite like rabbit holes. It enhances your campaign. Sometimes they can get completely distracted, in which case never underestimate the power of bringing in someone who's been badly mauled by the goblin horde to remind them that they are on that quest. So there we are. There we are. Rona, is that the next question? Yes. Ronan's 670 comma says, regarding your Kickstarter, if I responded, should I respond again with information requested to ensure my bases are covered, or hope for the best? Ronan 670 comma, if you have responded with your email, with an email, and you've given me your postal address and your telephone number, your contact number, that's the biggest thing that's missing, because that was what I screwed up in the Kickstarter survey. I didn't ask for the telephone number, and the delivery company of the book, so if you're getting a hard copy book, they will not deliver without a contact number. They have to have a contact number there. So bear that in mind. So if you have sent an email and it's got the captain's name, contact number, and your delivery address, You are sorted. Really don't worry about that. I've been going through those emails. The 100 people that remain, it means that 400 people have responded. So there's only 100 people left that we're going through. And oftentimes, I mean, they're just busy, or we've found that the emails have gone to spam a lot. So that's happened. Don't worry, on Friday morning, before I close it off, I will send out an email to everybody who has not given me their details. And so if you get that email, then you know, okay, you need to fix it. So have a look at that. Right, Landon says, I'm about to have my party experience a sequence of separate but connected visions. Any suggestions? I would connect the visions in a very obvious way. I know it might sound like, no, but my players are smart. They'll pick up on it. Semiotics, which is what we're talking about here, which is visual clues. It's a vision. Visual clues that will link stuff together. We use it in filmmaking all the time. Give them something that is common within all of their visions, but which is weird. So don't have them, oh, you all see a hut in the woods. Okay, we all saw a hut in the woods, so now we're going to go and look for a hut in the wood. That is a target. You want to connect the visions together. Maybe they all saw a hut in the woods, but as they were walking towards the woods, towards the hut, one of them stepped on a mushroom which shrieked and ran away. The next vision is one of them is inside a castle and they open up a wall, a secret wall, where they find a passageway, and as they step forward, they step onto a mushroom which shrieks and runs away. So you're connecting it with something that is in all of the visions, but in different places in all of the visions. So what it's doing is the only connection that it has with the vision is that it's in all of them, and that allows them to then link them together. So I would suggest something like that. I wouldn't use a screaming mushroom. Of course, a raven's feather, a red light, sound. It could be a sound. It could be a smell if you really want to expand it. So go and have a look. Look at what your themes are for your adventure and maybe try and do that. Next question is from Adrian, 1976. Will you be releasing another Goblin Christmas one-shot? As a matter of fact, we will be. Is it goblin-y? Yes. Is it Christmassy? Set in snow? Does that count? It's a little heartwarming tale. More will be coming out later on, but I'm going to be doing a live charity stream with my favorite sponsors, World Anvil, Dungeon Fog, and Kaora, the map maker. We will be doing a charity stream on the 18th of December, where we will feature this adventure that I have written, where the characters are playing goblins and their war goats have been stolen by a demented satyr, so they have to go and try and rescue the goblin goat herds. And of course there are many shenanigans that go on with that. I finished making all of the maps yesterday. There's 3 maps that are in that. If you are a Patreon of the channel, you will get that adventure as part of your Patreon rewards if you're at the $15 tier. So yes, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. If you're not a Patreon, you can find it on you'll find the adventure on our website as soon as I can get it up there, basically. I'm hoping to have it up before Christmas, but we want to make it look pretty and the like, so bear that in mind. Okay. Next one. Artsy Charmander Char says, what's the best way to keep my party from outsmarting me and acting in ways that subvert my campaign, i.e. collapsing the dungeon entrance and putting traps outside the rear? I would take that as a wonderful opportunity for yourself to improve your skills. So rather than looking at it as a problem of your players are outsmarting your campaign, they're doing these crazy and insane things which cause your monsters to fail, rather look at it and say, actually, what would the monsters in that space do? They would come charging out. They would hit those traps. Would all of them charge out? Maybe a few would skulk in the shadows and watch and go, you know what, these humans are pretty bloody smart. They didn't come into the dungeon. They set traps outside, killed everyone. I'm going to wait here until they are asleep. And then I'm going to sneak out. And I'm going to go and tell the next dungeon that there's a situation. Or I'm going to go and hire bounty hunters. Are going to come and find them. Let the players do what they're doing. But never, never, never underestimate the power of monster-to-monster communication. Why wouldn't they communicate? Why would a goblin horde that gets decimated, why wouldn't they have someone who rushes out and informs the rest of the goblin hordes? I mean, I used to look at it very much from your perspective. Oh, my players are so smart. In second edition Dungeons and Dragons days, players would travel around with a 10-foot pole. They'd have caltrops, they'd have string, they'd have bells, they would have everything that was needed to overcome dungeons. So when you used to design dungeons, there was massive amounts of psychological warfare going on between the GM and the players, which I found to be fairly toxic. Although that wasn't the game. The game never said, oh, it's you versus the players. It's always been cooperative. But there was a certain way of, I have to outsmart my players. No, don't outsmart your players. Embrace your monster's psyche and figure out what they would do. And you go, oh, orcs are particularly stupid. Okay, sure. So the orcs are thick. Thick doesn't mean that they're going to just let themselves be wiped out. Thick means, oh, we can't figure this out. All right, we need someone cunning. Like a squirrel or something. Something that will figure out a best way to do this. And then they set up. They go and hook up with a necromancer. So the players' actions are still having repercussions. What it does is it makes your world feel much more alive. It makes your monsters feel as if they are actually responding to what the characters are doing. It's a very, very powerful tool. Turn it on its head, embrace what the players are doing, and figure out how your creatures would respond to that. Blacklight XXXX says, how do I politely decline someone from participating in a campaign I eventually plan on doing? They have 100% enthusiasm for everything D&D, but I personally don't like their playing style, and they every now and then cause trouble in our current game with another GM. I have had this problem quite a few times, as a matter of fact, where players are overly enthusiastic, and you go, my game needs to be a bit more serious than that. I would quite simply and honestly say, okay, so that's it. Our game is over. The one that the current GM is running. Thanks, everybody. That was brilliant. And I'm going to be running a game, but I only want it to be, it's only designed for 3 players. So we've got the 3 players already. As soon as something opens up, or if we decide to add more people in, we'll get in touch and we'll talk. Just be open and honest about it. You could go the deception route. You're like, oh, it's over. We're not going to play anymore, right? And then secretly text the other people that on a Tuesday you play. It's just going to cause complications down the line. Just be honest and say, you know what? It's a small group. We're playing with 3 because it's designed for 3. These guys are available. And leave it at that. If they push, then say, I don't think your playing style is going to fit the game. And I don't want you to have a bad time. And if they're going to say, oh, I'll change my playing style. They're not. They won't. They can't. I don't think. Again, just be honest. Just be honest. I know it's difficult. I know it sucks. Offer to play board games. Play board games on a different night. Something along those lines. That's what I would suggest. Elf says, ever considered writing a book about how to be a great GM? Yes, I did. And I did, if that answers the question. If you head on over to www.greatgamemaster.com, you can find my first book called A Complete Guide to Epic Campaigns, which is basically how you go about setting up your own campaign and being a fairly good GM on the process, I would consider anyway. It covers all of your bases. So there is that. The second book is coming out as well, which is Nautical Campaigns, and both books are filled with, this is what I would do in these kinds of situations, and how do you plan and plot and work, etc., etc. So a lot of feedback from the book. People have found it really useful and instructive, and so yes, you can pick up a hard copy. If you do pick up the hard copy from blurb.com, please remember to send me an email, geekstable@gmail.com, and we'll send you the free PDF that goes with that. Inhuman Militia says, currently been in a game since March, and our party's big bad endgame coven of Elhoons were at level 9. Our DM is worried on how to make the game challenging for higher levels without cheap-shotting us. Okay, so in other words, you guys have increased in level, but the big bad has not increased in level. I don't see why the GM should be worried about cheap shotting. Those monsters since March, have they been inactive? And why shouldn't monsters increase in level? Why shouldn't they gain experience while they're committing their dastardly deeds? If a dragon has a horde and the first encounter with the dragon in session 1 is that it's an adult dragon, the players spend 6 months running around and they come across the adult dragon and he's now more powerful. It makes sense. He's been burning villages and taking castles and gaining experience. I would never be afraid of saying, well, he was level 9. How the player characters would know that they were level 9 is another metagaming question altogether. But if the GM is worried all the players know that they're level 9 and now they're not, doesn't matter. Just increase their level. I am astounded, and it's only because I think I am so irreverent of the rules, having just written a rule book. I am always amazed that people are worried about changing the power of creatures as written in the rule books. And this is not just a Dungeons and Dragons space. This is almost all of them. It's like, well, the book says the monster does this. Okay, great. Yes, let's take that as gospel. The book also says that they're only recommendations and that you are encouraged to change them as you need to. I haven't encountered an official role-playing game that doesn't have that little sentence somewhere in the dungeon masters, game masters, narrators, storytellers, whatever you want to call them, in their book. I haven't found one that has not said you are able and allowed to change what you need to change. So that applies to everything, and that includes the monsters. In Nautical Campaigns, I talk about how to create gigantic sea monsters, and some of the feedback was like, oh, but I don't know what these monsters do in terms of how do I stat them out. It's like, well, just do the thing. Yeah, but what are their CR ratings? Does it matter? It doesn't matter what their CR rating is. It's lots. It's fighting a ship that fires giant ballista bolts or mangonel. So just go with the flow. Go with the flow, that's all I'm saying. Have a bit of fun. Okay, that's my rebellious statement. Xander the Green says, opinions about lawful evil conjuration wizard PC that aspires godhood, that creates warlock NPCs and makes deals exactly like a devil. Well, it sounds like they're pretending to basically be a devil. If they've got enough power that they make these deals with warlocks, that's absolutely fine. It sounds like they could be quite a fun NPC, but I see that you've got it as a PC. How would they give warlocks powers? I'm not entirely sure. How do they fulfill the deals like the devil? There's got to be a limitation in terms of things. If they're lawful evil, we were actually doing... I'm going to segue a little bit here. For those of you that don't know, I do a podcast every week on the Patreon channel. I think it's a $3 tier. You get access to the podcast. And this week sees the launch of a new series where I have guest GMs on the podcast. And we do some pretty cool stuff where we design diabolical dungeons. It's the podcast called Dungeons of Diabolical Design. And we design dungeons and talk whilst we're busy designing these dungeons. I had so much fun. I recorded the first episode last night. I had so much fun doing the podcast that we forgot about the timing, so I actually had to tweak stuff. But in that, we were talking about alignments, and we were talking about how alignments should work. And this is a very specific Dungeons and Dragons categorization. There are other systems out there that talk about morals and ethics and that sort of thing, but Dungeons and Dragons specifically talks about alignment, lawful, evil, counter good, etc., etc. And we were saying how those alignments are very useful for novice players, for player characters, for players to guide them on how to run their character initially, and to bring in the idea that you can play something other than yourself. Because you as a human being on planet Earth are most likely lawful good. You might be neutral good if you don't mind breaking some laws, but not all of the laws. Maybe you're true neutral if you don't really care about your fellow man, in the collective sense. So we're in that sort of space there. Alignment allowed people to go, oh, well, I'm going to try and actually play a lawful evil character. So I have this honor code, but I don't mind killing people. Or however. So look at it from that perspective as well and say, well, those wizards lawful evil, but they're trying to become a god, which means they're trying to rewrite the law. So is that really lawful? Unless the gods have well, if you want to become a god, these are the steps you take. Create a whole bunch of warlock minions, and then you can ascend to godhood. In which case they are being lawful. So, yeah. I would question, how does the PC get so much power that they can do what a Patreon of warlocks has the power to do? So I would answer that question first. Next question, I see Angus Boys is asking a question. How do you compromise between having a plan, story arc, you liked for a party, and then throwing a wrench into the works with a more interesting idea that doesn't work with that plan? It's a very, very good question. So, you've come up with your story, and your players go in the complete opposite direction, or they completely violate it. If you haven't watched the latest episode of Descent into Avernus, so episode 11, it's streamed on Saturday night. It's not a spoiler. Well, it is a bit of a spoiler. So if you haven't watched it yet and you are going to watch it, I will do a thumbs up when I finish talking about it. But take your headphones off for now, or mute the stream, or whatever it is. I'm going to take a sip of coffee to give you time. All right? In Descent into Avernus, my original story, which is catalogued and is there for anyone to look at, was that the players were going to participate in the downfall of Zariel. In the way in which Zariel was going to become an archdevil. The players were going to be involved, their characters were going to be involved in that. I had been setting it up over 10 sessions that the player characters were making deals with individuals. Were making plans and plots and coming up with ways in which Zariel was going to come out on top. In this last episode, the party split. Not only in terms of they're on different planes, but in terms that they are split into 3 different factions. And they pretty much betrayed everybody. And not as a collective, but individually. So my story is shattered from one perspective. I never planned on the characters. One character has now signed up with the current archdevil. One has become a devil. And the others have kind of given up on the, so your story is important, and to have a story is fundamental to being a good game master, as far as I'm concerned. If you don't have a story, what are you doing? You're floundering. You're looking at random chaos. Guiding your characters so that your story continues to play out is, I think, the art of being a game master. It's not metagaming. It's part of the requirement of the game. Knowing when your players are going to, or watching your players destroy that story by doing other stuff, I think is where you get to being a good GM, by accepting what they're doing. And going back to what we were talking about earlier on in the stream, this is what they have done. This was my plan. My plan? No. The NPC's plan. What is the NPC going to do now that the players have done this? So as the GM, you go, this was my NPC's plan. How does it change? In other words, I suppose, you are transferring ownership of the story onto the NPC in which they were, that was going to enact the plan. Whilst at the same time stepping back going, well, I'm the GM. It was kind of my plan. So, yeah, just an idea. Just an idea. Think about it from the NPC's perspective, not the DM's perspective. Okay, hopefully you saw that. Spoilers are over. Hopefully that will help. Hopefully that will help. Xander the Green says, do you yet know if there will be a Season 3? I can confirm that there will not be a Season 3. At least not for the next 3 months at the very least. So we have had an amazing run on the D&D Twitch channel. It was wonderful. We're going to continue though. So fear not. We won't be on the twitch.tv/D&D. We will be on twitch.tv/GreatGM, which I think is where we probably belong. To be perfectly honest with you, it's not how to be a great D&D GM, it's how to be a great GM. So, will I continue to do 5th edition? Yes, of course I will. Watch the beginning of the show to understand why. Will I do other things? Yes, I have to admit, I have this deep hankering. I don't know if you guys get this. I don't know if you ever get this, but I play these games, right? And I've done Saltmarsh, and I've done Karos Stones, and Windswift, and Descent into Avernus. And I'm playing them, and I'm like, these are great, and I love them, absolutely love them, and I love the players that I'm playing with. But sometimes I get a hankering. I'm like, I wish I could use the same group and play that game. Like, I really want to do a Star Trek game. I really do, and it's such a limiting factor because I've got some options. I can go Modiphius with their 2D20 system. I wasn't keen on it. It didn't blow my hair back. I didn't give it a fair chance, and I was using the alpha rules that they sent me. So maybe the final rules came out and they'd polished up some stuff that I didn't like. I've got that option. I've got the Coda system, which came out years ago, and is quite complicated in its own way. But I really want to run a Star Trek game. Maybe I need to do it as a one-shot. But what I want to do is I want to have so much stuff involved. And especially because all of the games, not all the games, but the majority of the games that I run are online, and they're watched by you guys. So it really feeds into my television production background. And I want to have the players with Star Trek backgrounds and consoles, and when they roll a natural 20, they have starships. I want to do that. It's a huge amount of effort. And I'm like, oh, I really, 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 really want to do that. But I know not a lot of people are going to watch it because, it's Star Trek. It's not D&D. So if you ever want to know the pain of being a social media influencer, that is it. It's like, I really want to, but I know it won't do so well as if I released another 5th edition. Anyway, I mean, I know and I appreciate and I love the fact that all of you guys would go, I'd watch it, I'd love to watch it. Yes. But 100 people watching that show, YouTube will just kill us and go, wow, no one's watching your channel anymore. You get relegated to the back. And if that happens, that happens. You know, the YouTube channel disappears into the background. I have to go and find a regular day job again. That's a fate that we're willing to have. This was never meant to be a full-time thing in the first place. So it's definitely something that, if it happened, it happened. But it really does sit at the back of your mind going, well. So anyway, something to think about. I don't know if you guys go through that. Homerostamos Brava had a question, and since I worked out how to say that name out loud, I'm going to scroll back to it. Where the hell has it gone now? Homerostamos Brava says, I'm going to run a Pirates of the Underdark. Sorry, I thought it said Dark Water there. I was getting excited. I'm going to run a game, Pirates of the Underdark campaign. Could you give me some advice, tips? Well, absolutely. I mean, firstly, we've got a dark elf or a drow ship in our book. I think it's a lot of fun. We've had some artists working on the artwork, is looking really, really cool as well. Underdark is a difficult space because the players, it is conceptually something very different. This gigantic caverns space. It's very dark all the time. So your player characters need to fit in that. They need to bring that in and incorporate that into their character sheet. Something to add to your complication of designing the game. In terms of Pirates of the Underdark, you've got giant water caverns and things. That's really cool. Why did you create this in the first place, in the Underdark? Why couldn't you just have it as Pirates of the Dark Waters? Add in an S to the copyright plagiarism thing. Pirates of the Dark Waters, and have it on the surface. That way your players have got more voice options. If you specifically wanted to explore the Underdark, absolutely fine. Ships on the Underdark, they can't use sails, can they? Is there lots of wind in the Underdark? Certainly at higher elevations there's a draft, there's a breeze, but so how would the ships move around? Oars, that sort of thing, I think is going to be really cool. Fins, paddles, attached to electric eels that pull them through the caverns and things could be a lot of fun. I suspect a lot of it would be more around submarine type of activities rather than surface-based stuff. Your sight lines are limited. That was one of our big problems with underwater combat, is that your vision is obscured over 200 feet. So it's like, well, that makes for very close quarters stuff. So think about that. Orion Foris says, would you ever consider doing one-shots with fans? I have done it in the past. We've done podcasts with fans where we've got people involved. And I have early on done games with fans where we've had video connections and made new friends that way. As a matter of fact, I was convinced to run online games by a fan. When I did a video where I said I hate online role-playing, the fan said, well, you haven't done it properly. Let me show you. So I went and played a game with them online. It does happen from time to time. Sadly, scheduling is a major problem. The other day, I have some friends here in Tokyo, and they're like, can we play around the table? Can we play a role-playing game? And I went, all right, let's play around the table. For almost 2 years, I haven't played around an actual table. I've only played online. And it brought back some wonderful, 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 wonderful memories of just what it's like to role play around the table, and why I released that video several years ago saying, oh, I hate online role playing. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to experience. So I have no idea what question this had anything to do with. I just sort of segued here. Role playing with fans it's something that one has to consider very carefully from a production perspective. So you could have, and we did this for Windswift. We had auditions where we had fans who around the world could come in and audition, and then they got selected based on their resumes, quite literally, to participate in the game. And if you watch those auditions, because they're available, they're online, what certain people have as their standards is very different from what other people have as their standards. Now, everybody who role played with us online, I'm going to say this emphatically, was brilliant in one sense or another. They had a spark. That's why we invited them to come for the auditions in the first place. But it was that click, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting to see what people thought of and what they didn't think of. And if you look at it, Michael Cassavan, Dead Aussie Gamer, who is in as many things as I can put him in, because I absolutely love role-playing with him, he was a fan. And he became part of my space because of that. Jenny Anderson from Sweden, they were in those auditions, as a matter of fact. And they joined my game and now have been part of everything that I do because I love the way that they think. So it's, yeah, it's... It happens. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So probably once once every year or two, I suppose. Watch this space. If you're living in the UK and in London next year, there may be a call. There may be a call for people to join a game that I will be running in London. So if you're there, think about it. I don't think anyone from London is actually watching the stream right now, but you'll watch this on YouTube perhaps later on. Who knows? Okay, we're into our second hour. Usually these shows ran for an hour or 2 hours. I'm going to go 2 hours today because of the work that I've got to do today. Oh, I've got so much work to do today. It's absolutely... And it's fun stuff. It's writing adventures for the book based on what people have submitted. But at the same time, I know my hands get sore. They really do get sore from typing. So I'm enjoying this too much. So we're going to go for another hour. If you want creative writing challenge, we used to do that on the channel. Let me know in the comments. Say yes, we want creative writing. So just say yes to that. Okay. And next question is from Jeremy Barrett, who says, have you ever run a campaign during a peasant revolt? I'm trying to figure out who would have a hand in it politically. The revolt is due to famine. Peasants believe the nobles have food. It's a wonderful basis for a revolt, and generally speaking, the nobility usually does have food. It is very seldom that those in power would ever allow a situation to arise where there is no food for anybody. Usually they manage to keep it for themselves. So that's a good starting point. That's a good starting point. Now, peasants revolt. The peasants have to be organized by somebody. There needs to be someone driving this. If you think about peasants, we're talking medieval time period, so it doesn't matter what system you're in. It's more a case of who is getting them to all do this at the same time. The medieval world was very segmented and very segregated, and writing was kept to those in power because it kept them in power. It's very easy these days to organize a flash mob. You send it out on social media and supposedly people will arrive. Take away all forms of communication other than word of mouth. Your village is going to show up. All 12 of you are going to storm the castle gates. So you've got to think about how are they communicating? What is the motivator? And generally, it's other nobles who've got the money to send couriers to all of the villages, to get all of the villagers to march for it, who can go out there and drive these kinds of things. Money talks, and it, in a sense, it pays for others to talk, and that's the bottom line. So when I'm designing revolutions, Vive la Révolution, it's almost always about looking at the money. In The Adventures of the Windswift, the entire show is about revolution. The entire gist of what the PCs were fighting against was the idea that the dragons might be coming back after the revolt had sent them away. Gigantic spoiler, so I'll do a thumbs up when I'm finished talking about it. Gigantic spoiler. Take a sip of coffee. The revolt never even succeeded. The dragons allowed it to happen. They controlled it. Geek Unleashed is raiding with 14. That's awesome. Thanks, Geek Unleashed. The revolt never actually succeeded. It failed. But the dragons let them think that it had succeeded. So there was this big battle that transpired, and it was all orchestrated by those in power to allow those who don't have any power to think that they had power, but they actually didn't. So, yeah, always look at who's got the money, where is the money sitting, and how are they going to control it? Because they've got the money for a reason. They're not idiots, and they're not going to become idiots just because they have it. Okay, any other questions? So quite a few people asked for the creative writing. That's fantastic. Famine traditionally is humans making bad decisions by, yes, cutting down all of their trees on their island. So now they can't make boats to go fishing in. Oops. Wait, our entire food economy is based on fishing, and now we can't make boats because we don't have any trees. Well, that's just silly. Who let that happen? Oh, yeah, all of us. Earth is, I think, on the same course. So there we are. Anyway, oh, thumbs up, thumbs up. I'm finished talking about that spoiler if anyone was looking at that. Remember to put the word question in front of your question if you have any significant questions. But I don't think that there is anyone with significant questions. So I think we should go into the creative writing challenge. Okay, for those of you that needed a warning, watch out, that opening is crazy. We are working on a new one, by the way. We are working on a whole new look and feel and a whole new purpose for the channel. And just maybe we will talk about that towards the end of today's stream. So let's see what we get out of that. Right, the creative writing challenge, or the creative writing space, I should say, is an exercise that I used to do with script writers and graphic designers and dungeon masters and game masters, and I do it all the time with myself as well, because it helps develop lateral thinking and allows you to sometimes learn to think outside the box. Today's creative writing challenge is inspired by the new podcast, which is coming out tomorrow. I want you to take an existing species, so it doesn't matter whether it's Dungeons and Dragons, whether it's Star Trek, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Doctor Who, doesn't matter, even if it's our own real world, but it must be a sentient species. I want you to take that sentient species and put them into an environment and a new culture that's different. So, by example, desert orcs. Traditionally, orcs are green, and we encounter them in forests and fields and pastures. How does making them a desert orc change them? What is different about a desert orc as opposed to a regular orc? Unpacking that is an interesting journey in creating your own cultures. So, a desert orc, we said, well, maybe they're more religious. Maybe they're more religious. Maybe they're more cultured. Maybe they're more reserved. Maybe we can take a Persian base and glue that onto the orcish space. What would that look like? Write down your race. It must be a sentient race that has something that we can work off of, something that we can all reference. We go, okay, so Klingons, what if Klingons were all about, instead of them being this honor-bound, very violent group of people, what happens when those Klingons are turned on their heads and they become pacifists? What changes about their culture? Everything changes about their culture, and that is Worf's entire journey throughout 200 episodes of Star Trek. So think along those lines. Shadzar, I see this, says space horses galloping all over a Star Destroyer without spacesuits. Not what we're talking about. We're talking about subtle changes to a sentient species that will make them feel as if they are very different. So let's work on that Star Destroyer, on the Star Wars analogy. What happens if we try and make a ridiculous race a warlike race? You get the Gungans. Hate the Gungans. What a ridiculous idea. These individuals who cannot speak properly suddenly have these gigantic war machines that have a very advanced technology, and yet they're a bunch of idiots. All that nonsense. That just doesn't work for me. That just doesn't work for me. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Okay, so you guys get pondering on that one. Native American spin on nomadic hobbits. Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. Sea dwarves. Love it. Expand upon it. Desert Wookiees. Expand on it. So I love the idea of desert Wookiees. What are we going to do with desert Wookiees? How would they have adapted? So White Tigers, straight off the bat, swamp-dwelling necromancer dwarves A whole culture based around the dead, revering the dead, making guardians to protect the living, and heavy focus on fermented foods and drinks as it gives them visions of their ancestors. Lovely example of creative writing, swamp dwarves. I think that's an exciting option to go with. How do they handle the swamp and their beards? Because as someone who has a beard, and it's nowhere near a dwarvish beard, I can tell you, being in a swamp ain't gonna be great for a beard. And for me, fundamental to a swamp, or to a dwarf, is the beard. The same idea with the desert Wookiee. There's a whole lot of things we have to answer about Wookiees to begin with. We know that they are tree... They are arboreal, they run around in the trees, there's all that kind of stuff going on to it. But they're in a desert? How is that going to work? So, again, I love these suggestions that are coming through. Noble skyfaring tieflings? Yes. Unpack that. Expand upon it. Desert mermaids. Shadzar, in the podcast, we were talking about how to get mermaids into a desert. So you're talking about sandmaids, which I think is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Sandmaids, merfolk-like, but they swim through sand. That's terrifying. Unpack it. Unpack it. Unpack it. Cat Wookiees. Forget the Sphinx part. Cat Wookiees. How would Wookiees be if they behaved like cats? Just knock everybody off the starship. I don't know. I don't know. Let's run with that. Let's explore. Explore sea dwarves. Again, hair. I hate the fact that mermaids have long flowing hair. Why would they evolve hair? What does hair do? Hair has a few functions for most species that have it. Principally, it's about retaining heat around the body. Secondly, it's about reducing friction of bits of skin sliding over other bits of skin. Those are its two primary functions. It then has a whole bunch of sensory functions that are just associated with the hair. Aquatic animals don't have hair unless they started on land first. So anyway, it's my mermaids, you'll find in nautical campaigns, have very little hair. For that very reason. I hate it. Hate it. A group of forest tauren, instead of being bulky and full of muscles, they're thinner and agile to move through the treetops. Wolvi Zandalari. I like that. I like that. Treetops and horns. Don't see a lot of deer running around in the treetops. Think about how that might affect them. Think about how that might affect them. I do know that certainly in Africa we have a thing called a bushbuck. And the bushbuck, its horns are quite literally that big. They're maybe even smaller than my 2 fingers. Very, 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 very small horns. So something to perhaps adjust and mould our thinking around that. Let's go back. We're looking at Angus Boys talking about their desert Wookiees, short-haired, lighter fur tones, xenophobic, clan-based. I think Wookiees are, to a degree, I don't want to say xenophobic perhaps, but they're certainly clan-based within the Star Wars space already. Short-haired certainly could work. It really could work. I'm thinking about camels. Camel's hair is quite thick, but also it's not long. I mean, we're not talking sort of Afghan length hair. Could be short-haired. Could be short-haired. Again, thinking, reflecting, I'm busy contemplating in my head, what if they shaved? It was a ritualistic shaving, but a shaved Wookiee is just terrifying. What if they had white hair? So it reflects the sunlight, like Bedouin almost. Maybe something to think about there. I think we can push it a little bit further. Let's push it a little bit further. Sand shark merfolk. Yeah, absolutely. So they swim in the sands. Deep sea giants. Wears dragon turtle shells for protection. Barnacle armor. Coral weapons. Coral is very hard. Absolutely. The lowdown. Deep sea giants, I do like that, given my current nautical fascination. Would we see deep sea giants as having changed as much as whales have? If any of you follow the idea of evolution, you look at how the whales evolved from land animals into the ocean going that they are. Suddenly they look quite different. How would humans look if giants, I'm speaking of specifically, go that far? Samoan Islander orcs. Okay, yes, they are separated from the mainland orcs. They're proud and powerful, deeply tied to their ancestry and spirituality. Okay, but what is different? What's your twist on them? What when our players meet them causes our players to go, orcs, oh, we must kill oh. Urban socialized kobolds. That's a nice one. I had or have a race of kobolds known as the Barker kobolds. And the Barker kobolds were a tribe of kobolds who basically were doing what kobolds like to do, running around, taking, stealing, pilfering, etc. And then a paladin arrived in their midst to defeat them. And everything that they did, the paladin could overcome, and the paladin did not kill them because it was a paladin. The paladin beat them, broke them, beat them, broke them, tried to understand what they were after, beat them, broke them. They eventually, several of the clan members realized that what the paladin represented was true power. Not mucking around in gutters, fighting with goblins and the like. So the Barker kobolds were brought into existence. Quite literally, little paladin barkers, paladin kobolds who are virtuous, who worship a good god, and who basically that's their now lifestyle, is that they are these samurai styled paladins. So they are. There you are. A sea ant has evolved into communities of living kelp, says Roger Ball. I like sea ants. I think that could be a lot of fun. Giant kelps. The kelpies? No, kelpies is a very different thing. But yes, okay, I like it. Sea ants. Why not? Why not? If we've got trees, we might as well. Might as well. Okay, let's have a look. Dan Sturdevant says, what if the hair functions like jellyfish? So it isn't actually hair, it's tendrils or tentacles. Wolvie Zandalari says, what if the hair draws air from the water? Almost like gills, but not. Interesting idea. Interesting idea. The development of tendrils and breathing apparatus, those sort of externalized lungs, if you like, it could work wonderfully. How would that look? I think whichever way you cut it, it's going to look terrifying. I mean, can you imagine this sort of merfolkian individual, this very fish-like humanoid thing with this tendrils of stingers? I mean, it's Medusa on steroids, isn't it? I think that's brilliant. It's lovely. I really like that. I think that's a lot of fun. So there we are. Lovely development. Absolutely lovely development. They would farm on top of their houses using hydroponics and hunt on horseback. I assume Artsy Charmander Char that's referring to something else. I've missed that conversation. Where are we? Desert Wookiees speak in softer tones as noise carries further in the desert and would avoid sand getting in their mouths. Aha! Aha! Alpine centaurs. Yes, I like that. Shaved Wookiees look like Peter Mayhew. Absolutely. And so yes. Wool can isolate from heat, says Dave Bergamoth. I take your word for it. I absolutely take your word for it. I'm not sure wool. I've always only assumed was for heat, was for cold, to keep you warm. But perhaps it can. Yes, could be interesting. Okay, shaved Wookiees would need pants, and Wookiees. Yes, Sheds, are you quite right? There's all kinds of things that they would need. were already in the Galaxies video game. Really? That's interesting. Okay. Giants being in the water would make more sense already, I think. I mean, they're already giants. Correct. Yes, they are. They are. Treants made of coral and defend the waters instead of forests. I like that. I really do like that. We don't have a section in the nautical book for underwater creatures. We were just running out of time and space and money. You have to have illustrations drawn for all that kind of stuff. But this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. I like that idea. I really do like that idea. Okay, so we've spent about 20 minutes, roughly, give or take, on this idea of creatively taking races and putting them in different places, and then looking at that and then developing it further. And if there is one thing about creative writing that I hope that you take away from it, it's that it's not the first thought that comes to mind that's important. The first thought is the spark, but that is not the fire. You need to fan the flames by asking, but what? Is wool a good insulator from heat? If it is, brilliant. How do we take that further? How do we expand that? So the Wookiee's fur is more like sheep's fur, where it's coiled and it's thicker. Maybe it's darker, maybe it's lighter. They don't make lots of sound. These swamp dwarves, what's happening with their beards? These merfolk that have got tentacles. I mean, it's absolutely, I think, one of my favorite activities when it comes to role-playing is doing these kinds of experiments and seeing and going, you know what, that works, or actually, it doesn't really work. So there we are. Frank Robbins Jr. is a name that I haven't seen in a long time. Frank, how are you doing? I hope everything is good on your side of the pond. Kobold desert nomads traveling along the desert are a religious pilgrimage. I like that. I do like that. So, okay. We are done with creative writing for now. I mean, these ideas never stop having these ideas. They're wonderful. They're absolutely awful. They're awful. They're absolutely awful. They are awesome. Absolutely awesome. I'm seeing aquatic swamp halflings, and awesome and halfling becomes awful. I don't know why. Aquatic swamp halflings, green skin, webbed feet. Well, it makes sense. I like that idea. There we go. Okay, that means watch your eyes. We are back to questions. Questions about role-playing games. We've got about 26 minutes or so left before we end off today's session. So if you like talking about all these kinds of crazy designs, absolutely. But if you have questions about role-playing, now's the time to ask them. I'm glad to hear that, Frank. It's been a long time since we've had any chatting. Frank someone was asking about playing with fans and things. Frank was someone who role-played a long time ago with me and several others. So yes, there was that. Tolkien's giant eagles, if they were not airborne, would they become giant beagles? I think giant beagles would be more awesome. Can you imagine the hobbits riding into battle on giant beagles? Ooh! They certainly wouldn't have snuck into Mordor. That's definitely true. So there we go. It's so interesting. That the chat here comes up faster than the chat on the actual website, because this draws from the website. So AK Rice says, why did you have to make that awful light show intro? I wanted to do an intro. I wanted the show to have a bit more structure to it back in the day, so I put that together. I played around with some ideas. It tested quite well. People quite liked it, but things are changing. There's 94 people watching the stream currently. I wonder if I should talk about what we're planning on doing next year as a channel. I wonder. This year has been absolutely amazing from a perspective of, oh, I know why my chat's not updating. It's frozen. It is broken. There is no more chat. They're coming through. So all of the wonderful stuff about war beagles, called warbs, I haven't seen that because it just froze on me. Restream chat froze on me. Thank you, Restream. Anyway, do it. Do it, they say. Do it, they say. Okay, so I can't see questions, so hold your questions for now. We're going to be talking about what you can expect from How to Be a Great GM next year. And give me your honest feedback. The following pages have become unresponsive. Do we wait for them or do we exit the pages? Let's wait for them. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it may just have died. It may just have died. As long as the stream is still going, that's okay. Okay, so it does seem to still be going. There's lots of giant questions that have come through, so I really am sorry that I haven't seen those. That I have not seen them coming through. Okay, so Restream does seem to be very, very dead. I'm just worried if I close the one window, it will stop the stream from happening. I don't know how these things work, Jim, but anyway, there we are. Right, so I see there were some questions. White Tiger 225 had a question. Magenta 6 had a question, so please keep those questions. Dragon Soul 13 had a question. Keep them until I can get the stuff back, or I'm going to have to read them off of there backwards. That's fun. Okay. Dragon Soul 13, I'm going to answer their question very quickly. Watching the Ghost of Saltmarsh and now Descent into Avernus shows, what gives you the ideas to take... Oh, this is not irritating at all. What gives you the ideas to take the stories and change them around? What gives you the ideas? It's a very good question, Dragon Soul, and the very simple answer is I read through a campaign setting book like Ghost of Saltmarsh or Descent into Avernus, and there is so much material in there that you could run these campaigns for years. I mean, literally for years. I read through it, and on my first read through, I don't judge it, I just read it. I'm like, okay, there's that happening, there's that happening, there's that happening. I close the book and I'm like, right, what was the most interesting thing to me? And for Ghost of Saltmarsh anyway, it was very specifically the ship combat. That was very exciting. And then it was the idea that there was this town, excuse me, that had multiple factions working for and against the king who had abandoned the town. And the factions, the players were able and are able to, in Ghost of Saltmarsh, engage with the different factions. They can see all the different angles and stuff. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on with that, which is lovely. But Gellin Primewater being this puppeteer and controlling things was lovely. And that, for me, stuck out. So I said, okay, well, what would happen if the king suddenly took an interest? Now these two factions that were skulking in the shadows are going to be brought to the fore. Jenny made their character, and there was a lot of links to Gellin Primewater, so that kind of fixed it in my mind with then this idea of exploring it. So Gellin Primewater as the henge was important, and then the political factions became part of that original foundation. Descent into Avernus, again, I read through it and I went, this is really cool. With Descent, I was aware that there were going to be other channels running Descent into Avernus as well, so I didn't want to present the same stuff. It's like, okay, well, we've all now done the Cybrix mission, which is in the book. It's a wonderful mission, and I wanted to do it. I actually included it in the original plan because it's such a cool mission, a little adventure. But I wanted to make sure that it was also something different. So there I was looking at it, and what sparked my question, and it was actually someone, they asked it in the stream, I think on episode 1 or episode 2, they're like, why would Zariel think that she could do this in the first place? Why would she invade hell? She has no backup from heaven. Why? What is her basis? And I went, well, that's a good question. What is her basis? How would she possibly think she could get away with it? Okay, if she hires people to help her that think like the devils, if she thinks that the underpinning philosophy of the divine is misguided because they cannot think like their enemy. Okay, that's an interesting one. Let's explore that line and let's go on that line. So that's where that one came from. Wolvie Zandalari, have you heard of the Pokemon? No, I have not. That whole wave completely missed me by. Completely missed me by. the Pokemon, Digimon, Dragon Ball Z. I'm a He-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles child. When I say child, that's what I grew up with in my up until my now. I'm still a fan. Artsy Charmander. How do you deal with players who end up being my way or the highway with other players, removing them from the campaign isn't an option? Significant other won't let me play without them. How do you deal with players who end up being my way or the highway, and removing them is not an option because the significant other won't let me play without them? Sounds like they're both using it's my way or the highway. My advice would be, find a different group. I know it's horrid and you go, oh, but I really like role-playing with this person. Sure. But if they're giving you those kinds of demands, you have to play with my spouse, otherwise I'm not playing. Bon voyage! Go have fun playing with your spouse. RPGtablefinder.com. There are thousands, literally, of people looking for games all around the world. You do not need to take that kind of psychological abuse. This is your free time that you are spending hours and hours and hours and hours on. Why should you do something that you don't want to do? Doesn't make sense. And because of friendship, it's not friendship if they're forcing you to do something that you don't want to do. So there we go. Unless they're making you a better person, but it doesn't sound like they're trying to make you a better person. Michael Ward, so how would you do a full-out revolt in a city that the players are in? So with minor people have snuck into the city and have come to the surface and want to take the city back. I would run it as a full-out revolt. Look at it in terms of a reverse siege. What are the people going to do? Traditionally, when you revolt against a ruler, you take control of communications first, and then you lock down weapons and armory. Or you do it at the same time, preferably. That's a whole bunch of missions just waiting to happen. Just waiting to happen. The players need to go and take out this. They need to do that. They need to do the next thing. So break it down into a series of adventures that the players can participate in, either for or against. If the players don't care and they just want to leave, well, so be it. So be it. There you go. There you go. So that would be the basis from where I would start, is breaking it down into a series of things that they need to do and achieve. Okay, next question from the Phantom Menace. How are you doing? I'm stressed at the moment, but in a good way. In a good way. You know, this is my full-time job, and so I hate complaining, going, oh, I've got so much work to do, because I love it. I really do. But yesterday, for example, I started work at 7 in the morning, and I only finished at 10 p.m. last night, simply by virtue of the fact of being in Japan. When I move from Japan to the UK, my time zones will be a lot better, which will take a lot of the stress away. Writing, I think, and when you're writing, so for the book, for example, I've got 12 adventures to write for the book, plus all of the other stuff that we normally do. We are redesigning how to be a great GM for next year, and I'm moving to Japan. So there's a lot of stress, but role-playing is a lot of fun, and I will never give it up. I will do it until the day I die. I cannot, as I say to people, my mother turned 71 a couple of days ago, and you know, we're saying to her, you know, you really should go into an old age home now, so we can sort of just forget about you, and you've done your bit, you just go away. No, we're not saying that to her. Well, there's some truth in the humour. Anyway, I look at my mother and I'm going, oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait. She's 71. She doesn't work. She's got this, you know, she's got the retirement stuff going on, but she's got all this free time. When I have all that free time, I'm just going to role play. Then there's a large part of me which goes, you know that you're doing that already. You are already in retirement phase. You just happen to be able to survive off of doing that. So it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. But retirement, if I was someone that, you know, if I ended up, I'm 90 years old and I need permanent care and that sort of thing, and there's no one around to care for me, and I've got to go into a home, it's going to be a blast. It's going to be wonderful. You know, if that happens, I mean, if we get that far, I mean, that's hopefully 40 years away, give or take. And you go, well, okay, maybe by 40 years it'll just be VR and we'll all just be in pods quietly decomposing. I don't know. I think it's going to be fun. Right, so Lord Nightcon says, What would be a genesis for a character who is an atheist in a D&D campaign setting where there's often very little doubt that the gods exist? What would be a genesis for a character? What would be, if you're asking why would they be an atheist, the long and short of it is I have no real reasonable answer for that. I don't, it would be, they would have to be akin to people who are clinging to falsehoods in our current existence. So if you are a flat earther, I respect your ability to choose to be a flat earther. However, I completely disagree with your fundamental principle. The earth is not flat. It is round, and there's lots of proof that goes with it. I should know. I've flown around it a couple times. Having said that, there are flat earthers who believe that the earth is flat, even though there is contradictory evidence that supports the fact that it's round. I would imagine that you would apply the same kind of ideology, that you get these individuals who have this inherent belief, and that demonstrations that are contrary to it are either attempted to be explained away, or are converted into illusions, or are simply denied, or ignored, or taken as trickery in an attempt to convince them otherwise. So yeah, I would do that and run it from that perspective. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. Yes, bold claims on this channel. Absolutely, bold claims. I like cheese. There, I got it off my chest. Oh, such a relief. So there we are. There we are. I don't see any more questions in that block there, and Restream may be back. I'm going to try and connect to the chat again. Maybe it will work. No, computer says no. Okay, so I'm going to continue watching these ones behind me. Okay, so this is what we are thinking of doing for next year, and your comments and thoughts, and honest comments and thoughts, are absolutely fundamentally required. So hold your questions for now, please. Hold your questions for now. Because otherwise we're just never going to get there. Because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to continue answering questions. Viva la cheese. Viva. Next year, How to Be a Great GM, we have decided to take a more structured approach to how we run the channel. In terms of actually designing a full-on curriculum. So my background is I used to be a lecturer in film and television. And I designed many curriculums on how to teach people film and television. Curriculum in broad strokes is, okay, we're going to unpack everything. We're going to explore every aspect that we feel is fundamentally required to be a good scriptwriter. So in this case, I've started to design a curriculum of exactly what is it that you need to be a good game master. And I had a meeting with the Web Goblin last night where I started to propose the curriculum. This could very well be a 3-year degree in terms of outline. I've been putting it together. I've finished with the first pass of year 1. We've got all of the episodes already planned for year 1. I mean, I haven't written them out yet, but when you start to break down from the basic level, assume that the person knows nothing and that they have walked into the lecture hall for the very first time. They've signed up to be a GM. And you go, okay, right. Where do you start? There is so much material that we said, okay, well, this is it. The challenge that I have as the creator of it is if I just do year 1 stuff for the whole of next year, anybody who is an experienced GM is going to watch some of the episodes and go, oh, but I know this. Oh, but I know that. Oh, but I understand this. So there might be limited value for a lot of people who watch the channel currently. But in theory, for someone who has never role-played before, this should be a fundamental space. So we're not talking, okay, rule 1 is this. That's a component. That's definitely a component which we're looking at. But it's something that we're very cognizant of. Second year, which is when we start getting into more convoluted stuff, is where we then start breaking things down in a much more comprehensive way, saying, okay, so let's talk about stealth missions. How do we do stealth missions correctly? Well, there's a whole lot of stuff that you should know beforehand before you start thinking about a stealth mission. So that's what we're thinking about, is looking at it from that perspective and running it from that way and doing it as a double system, whereby on, let's say, the Monday, the material is released, the official material is released on YouTube, where we then say, okay, cool, let's do this. And then on like the Friday, we do a live show. And it's unpacking, and I know I use that term too often, it is expanding upon what happened in the pre-recorded video, but then it's also answering questions. So it really is, right. We were speaking about cultural appropriation and role-playing, which would be a second year topic, for example. Now we're doing the live stream. We're going to be talking about it and answering questions that you might have that have come out of that. This is, I mean, obviously from my background as a lecturer, this is something that I would love to do just on the grounds of there is so much cool stuff that we can talk about and that we can do. So I see some suggestions coming through in terms of a compromise. Alternating between intro and advanced videos each week. We're certainly looking at that. We're certainly looking at that. And we're looking at possibly, we go, okay, we're actually going to run first year, second year, and third year, so that you're getting one lecture a month, basically, from each of the different categories. If I do it that way, though, it's going to take it'll take you 3 years to work through all of the stuff anyway, but it's going to take so much longer for the new guys to get rolling because they're only going to get 1 video a month as opposed to getting 4 a month. The intermediates are going to get 1 video a month. So it's so interesting. It's so interesting. And we're also looking at it from this fact that Dungeon Fog and World Anvil, our 2 biggest sponsors, are absolutely on board. And so another component that we're looking at, and I haven't designed this yet, is saying, okay, so today we're talking about designing a basic encounter. That's the theory part. Another video is, right, we're drawing the map for said encounter. What do we need in that map component? And then another one is, well, we're going to be using a virtual tabletop. So what do you need to prepare for your virtual tabletop as well? Because sometimes with virtual tabletops, you need tokens, you need stat blocks, you need etc. So we're looking at it from that whole thing. It's like, here's the complete pipeline, folks. You won't ever have to step anywhere else to really break it down. Because this is it. This is these. You watch this video, and you watch this video, and you watch that video, and you now have the entire process. We were also cognizant of the fact that we go, well, yes, there's World Anvil, yes, there's Dungeon Fog, yes, they're sponsors of the show, but there are many others out there as well. Many other options. We need to choose one to base ourselves off of because you have to do that. And I know even when I was lecturing film and television, there were 2 big edit systems, or 3 actually. One was just out of our price range. There were 2 big edit systems. One was Adobe Premiere and one was Apple Final Cut Pro. And we went, well, you know what? We have to choose. We have to choose one or the other. The principles are similar. So that's what we're going to do. So as a channel, we need to do that as well. Now, obviously, I'm going to be reaching out to all of our partners and our previous sponsors saying, okay, well, I need a virtual tabletop. I need this. I need a that. I need a et cetera, et cetera. So where we've got gaps, we're going to talk about that kind of software. And obviously, we're going to say, okay, guys, sponsorship needs to happen in terms of like with Dungeon Fog and with World Anvil, we've got that 20% discount because these things require subscriptions. So there's that. And then the final section of this whole idea is that every episode comes with notes. So it is quite literally, here are your notes from today's video. The video spoke about the ethics of GMing during a nuclear holocaust. I don't know. Here are the case notes. Here are the files that go with it. And then here is the homework that you can do if you feel it has value. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're looking at for next year. We're like, okay, the channel has got 400 videos on it. It's got playlists from years ago. I mean, there's people say to me, oh, have you got a video on this? Yes, we do. And we actually started an initiative to build a database so that people could search it. And you go, for some people, they don't know what they're looking for. So is a database really going to work? Well, yes, it will. So we're still continuing with that, but a structured approach will work better. And the fact that you'll be able to go to our website and download the notes so that you end up with it's going to be a LeverArch file worth of notes, or ultimately bound into a book that you can do work in. As I said, I've designed curriculums. So at the end of the year, it's like, well, you want to write an exam on what we've been talking about? There's the exam. There's your grade. There's your score as a GM. So yeah, it's we excited for it, and hopefully you guys are. I think that it's, for us, it's the right thing to do. And yeah, so let's look at it that way. Some comments that are coming through. Juxtaposed Stars says an important factor that YouTube is not consumed in the same way as a lecture. While lectures and semesters are spread out over the year, people binge YouTube content. Yes, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And that's again why I'm going, I'm reluctant to do it, 1 week is first year, 1 week is second year, 1 week is third year, the final week is randomness or whatever it might be, because there are people who want to just consume everything. These will not be 1 hour long lectures. They certainly could be, but they definitely won't be. I don't want that to happen at all. Probably the usual sort of 20-minute video type of stuff, but yes, again, it's I'm very excited for it because it's taking me back to all of the careers that I've done in the past, which excites me. And so many people have asked, what's the story? What's this? What's that? What's it's very, how do we teach role playing? Okay, well, we're going to do that. Exactly. So there we are. Right. Xander the Green says, how difficult would you consider it to be to turn a small church into a cult of an opposing god? To turn a small church. So converting the people within the church, you'd need to be subversive. And I think that, yes, driving a wedge, getting rid of the pastor, replacing them with one who's more amiable towards your cult's opinions would be the first step. COPA are, of course, causing lots of tension, primarily amongst those that have content aimed for kids. We looked at it. I've looked at it. I've watched a lot of the videos of, COPA is going to burn the world down and everything is going to die and etc., etc., etc. And yes, YouTube, of course, is definitely having to comply with that kind of stuff. Do I think it's right? Do I think it's wrong? I think it's right, to be perfectly honest with you. I used to produce children's content for television, and I remember part of our budget, this is in South Africa, was that we had to have a resident child psychologist monitor every part of the show, from the script through to the actual production of it, and right the way through the editing of it. And they had to sign off at the end that they felt that the content that we were producing was not in any way harmful towards the children that we were aiming at. Our target market was 5-year-olds in those days. And it was quite literally a little old lady sitting telling traditional stories to these little sort of Ewok-style Teletubby monstrosities, played by an amazing set of twins. We had 3 sets of twins, because you're not allowed to film with kids for more than 20 minutes at a time. So we would cycle them out. It's like, okay, off you go, off you go, off you go. You know, so I've worked under regulations like that before, and you go, well, that's a good thing. It's a good thing in a way. In another way, though, you kind of go, it's the internet. And I'll confess, when I got the internet in 1994, 95 was the first time that I started to access the internet via a friend's machine. I mean, it was way back when. I was researching Star Trek. I was researching dinosaurs and pornography. I was a 14-year-old child. What child is not going to do that? So that raises a whole different question. A whole different question. In terms of data, adults can't protect their data. They cannot. We constantly getting Russian things trying to take over our website and you know, cause things to collapse and all that kind of stuff. Adults can't do it. So how on earth can kids even... Anyway, that's a whole different kettle of fish altogether. I don't think it's going to affect How to Be a Great GM. The whole copper movement, I really don't. I think if they push it to the point where it's you know, your channel has age groups and that's it, and I know that they are looking at that, that's absolutely fine. Our target demographic are 16 pluses. If YouTube says you've got to go from 18, that's okay as well, for us anyway. I know a lot of YouTubers who do D&D content, their demographic is 15-year-olds to 25-year-olds. They might take a bit of a knock, but to be honest with you, there's pros and cons on both sides, and we have to just roll with the punches and see where we end up. Nearly out of time, so Deadeye says they like the idea of different courses. Absolutely. And I don't see why not. I really, really, really don't see why not. Magenta6 says, I started playing my first regular campaign in a long time with a good friend that is GMing for us. Right away, we picked up an NPC. This is going to go off my screen. Let me see if I can find it. It's in Twitch. Twitch also updated its interface, so now the chat's on that side. I'm just full of complaining today, am I not? I must be quiet. Right, so I found it here. Right away, we picked up an NPC that's just a little goblin, but has become part of our family. My problem is that now my gameplay is so affected by worrying about if my favorite part of the game, this NPC, is safe with his handful of hit points. If it died, I'd be kind of devastated and wouldn't feel like playing much. I'm sure this is silly, but what should we do? Magenta6, there's a line between investing in the NPCs, absolutely, which is what you're doing. That's brilliant. The line, however, gets to the point where you go, well, I don't want to play anymore because he died. You are affecting yourself, first and foremost. You are disenfranchising yourself in terms of experiencing the game. When that little character dies, when that little goblin dies, yes, you as the player are going to go, I love that little goblin. I thought it was so cute. I don't want to play anymore. That's your initial reaction. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly valid. You like that little creature and you're not going to get it back again. However, the role-playing opportunity for you to expand yourself as a role player is to say, what would my character do? My character would be as upset as I am. No doubt about it. What is my character going to do? My character is a good character, they're a good person, but this thing has happened which is bad, and it's I'm going to rage against that. Or there are gods in the sky. I am going to dedicate myself to getting that little goblin back. I'm going to go to the gods and demand that they bring back the goblin because of justice. It must be done. Look at it from that perspective as well. Look at it from that perspective. Also, hold a funeral. Bury the goblin. There's a reason why we do that in real life. It's a way of closing out that chapter in our lives. We're still sad, but it is a way of closing out. So run through that process. Go through that process. So there you are. There you are. Right. Lots of comments going on. Baby Yoda. I have not seen The Mandalorian yet, so no spoilers if you please. Now, obviously, Baby Yoda, everyone knows about Baby Yoda. If you live on planet Earth, Baby Yoda has appeared on your feed or stream somewhere. So yes, that's absolutely fine. But no spoilers, please, on The Mandalorian itself. I'm waiting for that enjoyment next year when I have moved to the UK. So there we are. 2-hour sessions are rough. Okay, so I'm happy to go back to 1 hour. But when I was on 2 hours and I went to 1 hour, everyone said they want 2 hours. They want to go back to 2 hours. I do know that it gets quite late for anyone joining from Europe, though. So that I am also aware of. Right. Seeing if there are any other questions coming up behind me. Bloody execution, that's always fun to do. Surprise and fear are our two main weapons, three main weapons, etc, etc, etc. Love them. An hour and a half compromise. I don't know, it's weird. I don't know, I mean, it would be interesting to try and fit into an hour and a half. Blacklight says, how do I go about asking for some kind of world map from our DM in a homebrew setting? My character is from somewhere far away and had to leave because of public opinion on tieflings, but my DM doesn't seem to have planned for 2 traveling PCs from far away. What would be your way of going about asking if they had some kind of world map planned at all in the homebrew setting? GM, we're in town, are we not? Yes, you are. Okay, good. My character goes to a cartographer. Is there someone around? I start asking questions about a map maker. Quite literally do it in game. Because if your GM gives you a map out of game, as the player, you have that knowledge. As a player, you know the world and where your tiefling came from and where you currently are. But your tiefling does not. And unless your tiefling went to finishing school and studied geography, they wouldn't know it. Point in case, there are many people on planet Earth that if I said to them, where specifically is Chad? Chad being an African country, a very big African country. Where is it specifically? And does Tanzania share a border with Botswana? A lot of people wouldn't be able to answer that question. From the Northern Hemisphere and from the Southern Hemisphere as well. They'd go, where? There's some people who don't even know that those countries exist. So, that's why I'm saying, definitely get in on a role-playing perspective. Go to a cartographer's guild. Start drawing your own map as a character. Something to look at. Definitely a way to go. Definitely a way to go. Okay, it's 1 o'clock here in Tokyo. Whatever time it is over where you are, I have had an absolute blast, and I hope you have as well. Currently, we've got 16 viewers on Twitch, which is awesome, and 82 on YouTube. Yay, go YouTube. That's a whole nother debate which we can have next week. I will be here next week. We can talk about all kinds of wishful thinking, wonderful things, and unpack more about next year if you so choose. Bring your questions. If I didn't answer them today, I apologize. I was going through them as fast as I could. I don't know why I'm I know why I'm spinning. I know why I'm spinning, because this particular wardrobe Like I said, it's got skirts. I can't lift them up high enough because, anyway, it's got skirts. So when you spin, you get like little twirly bits going on. Anyway, there we go. Until next week, until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.